Hey guys, welcome back to Total Tactics FPL. It's Fran here and I'm back with a new video. It's going to be the Game Week 2 review. A little bit late, but I just wanted to actually save some time as I was feeling a little bit sick yesterday to actually think about my thoughts and gather how I felt about this game week and how I want to pursue making changes towards my team going forwards. In all honesty, it was a fantastic game week. Pretty much everything went exactly to plan. I'm 2 or 3 points off of the sort of top ranks within the 20-30k area, and that might have just come down to little things like going for Sanchez over Ramsdale and then opting for an Arsenal defender, maybe playing a back five potentially, or even when we just look between my current formation within a 4-4-2 template, maybe just going for Ederson instead of Ramsdale and then going for Saliba over Diaz. Obviously Saliba scored an own goal, but just thinking about how that would have produced some value within my team to upgrade other positions, that would have been the most ideal team. But as things stand, I'm still very, very happy with the team. Last week I mentioned how important I thought Trent, Cancelo and James were. And simply put, they've performed exactly to my expectations. Again, Trent obviously in another game where they lost a clean sheet. But I don't think there's ever really a bad position to own Trent. We saw within the game many, many times when he was triple bonus points, even when they actually lost the goal early on versus Crystal Palace. So that just shows you the kind of value that Trent has as a bonus farmer, which is what I like to call him. And then Cancelo has started the season off incredibly hot. And I just don't see the Newcastle game being such a poor game that people expect. Ultimately, I think City are a team that when I watched them play at St. James Park were incredibly dominant. Diaz was close to scoring. This is the game where he got injured, if you guys remember correctly. So these are the instances where I really think we have a great opportunity to just keep Diaz within the team. Yes, he's at 6.0, but Walker's already moved to a 5.1 price, and that's kind of the issue with the team in reality. He's provided non-stop clean sheets. He could still provide attacking returns for me, definitely more so than Walker. When it comes to comparing versus Ake, I think Ake is unfortunately just on a bit of a timer. He's going to be dealing with John Stones maybe if he has a bad game, or Laporte when he's back fit in the subsequent month. So that is my main concern, and that's why I still like the position of owning Diaz. And I actually think when I look at my team, looking at the bench is the most important part here, because Bailey has been a significant problem, and for most managers, he will be the leading problem within the team. He's 5.0, so basically 0.5 over a default 4.5 budget midfielder, and I just really see myself maybe making a standard transfer of going into a 4.5 midfielder and then actually moving into Nico Williams and playing a 5 back for next week, rolling the other transfer, and then having two transfers once again for game week 4, where I imagine there will be some other issues. What I like about this is I don't really have to think about moving out of Diaz for now. I'm still a manager who's very confident about owning Diaz for Newcastle away, even though people project that to be a poor game. I'm still very happy with the template team. The Darwin red card has really increased Luis Diaz's value as a pick, in my opinion. I don't really have the opportunity to move into triple City unless I want to go out of Diaz and then out of, or both Diaz's really, but as you can see in my team, because I already have a triple up of City. And that's sort of the situation, and I feel like I'm locked in, but I'm happily locked in into this team structure. So that's kind of the position that I'm in for now. As far as players like Salah and Haaland, those are ones where when we see Salah blanking game week 2, I'm sure a lot of managers who are probably a little bit more newer to FPL will think, this is maybe the season that finally Salah will not do well. I've got to be honest and say that United game looks very, very tasty, and I would love to have Salah as my captain there. So next week going forwards, he's going to be my captain, so no real worries about him blanking there. Martinelli has pretty much taken stride to stride within this Arsenal team. And what I like about his positioning with the difference with Ben White tucking in a little bit more is it has forced Saka a little bit out wide. I wonder when Tomiyasu comes back into the team whether things will change, whether Saka will take in some more attacking positions. I wouldn't argue that Saka has been playing right wing back. If you did a simple Google search of Saka, you'd probably think he was, but he's definitely not. He's still clearly playing right wing. But Martinelli has occupied much more interesting positions, and part of that I feel is because of the way some of the left side positioning has changed. Zinchenko pushes higher up, occupies the left mid position at times, and Xhaka is someone who at times, because of Nuno Tavares, needed to deputize a left back, has actually moved a little bit more forwards, and Xhaka, granted Xhaka that is now taking much more offensive positions, and I really like that. I wouldn't consider going for Granit Xhaka as a 5.0 Arsenal midfielder because I still think the defenders are much better value at that sort of price point. But his positioning has also therefore just push Martinelli that much further forward. And I really like Martinelli, as I said, an underpriced asset. And now even with the substitutions going towards Saka's way and not Martinelli's with Smith Rowe, I mean, he just looks like an incredibly good pick. Jesus, nothing else to say about him. He looked incredible versus Leicester. We already saw glimpses of his attacking potential and how much he contributes to the attack, even through build-up play and through his ability to press on the front foot within Crystal Palace. So really good to see he did well. He's going to be a captaincy shout as well versus Bournemouth. But I do like Salah probably a little bit more for now. And then Haaland, I think, is just a keep. I don't see myself moving into De Bruyne, and I therefore don't see myself going out of Haaland either. And because I get the chance to play Nico Williams, I do think the transfer and the tinker so far will just be to move out of Bailey and then move into another 4.5 midfielder. I just don't see myself going into someone like De Silva. I want that money as much as possible to be able to kind of spread into other assets. You see, saving 0.5 I think would be quite an ideal position for this team. So if I just filter, 4.5, that is going to be the interesting position that I'm in, where I'm probably thinking about going for someone like Reed or Lavia for now, and then playing around some of the other pieces in my team. Going out of Diaz, Ruben Diaz that is another possibility with this team. If I, let's say, don't go out of Bailey immediately, I could obviously go out of Bailey and go out of Diaz. The issue is at 6.0, the best option is going to be Rodrigo, who unfortunately is 6.1. And unless I go for Doherty, who is a potential player that I could opt for. So let's say if I go for Doherty here, I could actually find a structure to find Rodrigo within my team. And potentially I could just delay the Rodrigo transfer by 1 game week just to see if he's still on the cards, because the Chelsea game is going to be an incredibly tough game. I could potentially just play Doherty anyways alongside Nico Williams, play a back 5, and then think about going for that Rodrigo transfer in the subsequent week, hoping that he doesn't rise immediately after the Chelsea game, or it's at least something that I can capitalize on. So this could be an interesting team structure here, and this would move me out of Triple City. So that's one thing to think about, how I would get back into Triple City. For now, it does seem quite tough if I was to move into this team structure, but I would also be quite happy owning some of these pieces. It really also just depends on whether we get some Spurs early team news. They are the team that has the early fixture, as you can see down here. So that's going to be very, very impactful for managers making decisions this week. I would actually suggest that if you're the type of manager who's thinking of moving outside of the Triple City template, looking to go into potentially out of Trippier, looking for options around the Cucurella price point of 5.0, 4.9 like Doherty, then have a look and see if there's any early Spurs team news that we can actually take some benefits from. And that's kind of why I'm suggesting here the Doherty Rodrigo option. So that is one thing here. But I do think I'm actually going to play it quite safe, quite template, because I like the team so much, and because I like Ruben Dias and his chances of getting a clean sheet versus Newcastle, or even getting an attacking return just like he did in the second half of last season. So that's probably another possible option. These are the kind of tinkerings that I'm thinking about. But otherwise, an incredibly great start to game week 2. Already within the top 100k ranks, or there and thereabouts. 100k, I think 100,802 is my current rank. But very, very happy with the start overall. And let's have a look at the price rises. So here are the price rises. And as I kind of said last week, this is fplstatistics.co.uk, a very, very useful site to actually see daily price rises. It kind of traces the algorithm in FPL and tries to project who would be the impending price rises or price falls on a daily basis. It doesn't get it tried and true. Sometimes it does change. It does seem like FPL Towers does change things based on what they feel like, but this is as things stand. So a lot of the Arsenal assets once again going up. Zinchenko going up to his first, I guess, tangible price rise into 5.1, where you can transfer him out now that he's 5.2. That's going to be super interesting for him. I don't think there's a need to go to Zinchenko. I don't think he's absolutely nailed. I did mention within the Crystal Palace game, and also kind of comparing it within the preseason games, that Zinchenko isn't an option that you have to change your team structure around. If you have another Arsenal defender, I think it's totally fine. As far as Jesus and Martinelli, those are going to be nailed options for a lot of teams going forwards. And I can see Martinelli rising all the way up to 6.6, 6.7, maybe even up to 7 later this year if he gets to keep this starting spot within the Arsenal team. Their fixtures are just perfect, effectively. And he could be one of those serial price risers that we see at the end of the season as one of the best valued assets, or someone who we actually end up having in our team towards the very end. You have someone like Rodrigo as well at Leeds at that sort of price point who's doing just as much. Obviously, Rodrigo does have the tough Chelsea game, but Leeds themselves have really, really good fixtures. But that's not to say that you need to replace Martinelli with someone like Rodrigo. Ultimately, I think there is a genuine possibility to say it's very, very valuable to move into someone like a Rodrigo and get two 6.0 players around that price point, because the 5.0 to 5.5 assets just aren't really cutting it for us. As far as Jesus, he's just going to be nailed, so nothing really to discuss there. Same with Cancelo, sorry. Kulusevski is going for another price rise. That's super interesting because I think people are expecting that now that Spurs and their fixtures have eased up, that he will be projected to move. I do like moving away from, let's say, assets like Saka to move into Kulusevski. The reason why I like that is there is definitely just more value within Arsenal assets that aren't priced at 8 outside of Jesus and Martinelli. You can go for one of the defensive pieces. I'm not a huge fan of Granit Xhaka, but definitely it seems like it could be worth moving your funds into a piece that is quite hard to get. A lot of people don't have Son, don't have Kane, and Kulusevski has been playing well to start the season, so he could be someone who you could benefit with a sword type of pick early on. As far as James, he's an interesting one because I feel like most managers did start quite, I would say, tentatively with James because of the news of Perisic not being able to start. But it seems like the rest of the player base who might have omitted James from earlier drafts are now still looking for ways to go into James. He's definitely going to be one of those template options going forwards. And I think what's interesting about James is people discussed before he scored the goal versus Tottenham whether Cucurella could be a suitable downgrade, and I think the answer simply is no. He'll play enough minutes at right wing back, yes, maybe 20 to 30 in some tough games, because he might have to defend at right centre back under Tuchel's kind of, I guess, tactical game plan, but within the easier fixtures, you could see James absolutely capitulate some teams like he did versus Newcastle when they were very, very weak, and he showcased some really, really impressive finishing last season. Rodrigo going for his second price rise is very, very scary, and that's kind of the situation where I feel like maybe before next week starts, hopefully his trade momentum stops, but he's definitely on most managers' radars. I think he's probably actually the third best or most interesting midfield asset in the game for now, because of what the Bamford injury holds and what it means for him. Trippier rising is an interesting one because it does seem like they're going to hit the City fixture. Then Liverpool could be another opportunity to lose the clean sheet. I can understand why people have gone for Trippier. The Newcastle defense has looked very, very astute. Pope as well has looked like a very, very good keeper, as we all expected. That would be a considerable upgrade. So I do like Trippier as a pick in isolation. There is obviously the competition there with Spurs players, especially Spurs players who have had price drops. Perisic is an interesting option to move down from Diaz, as I mentioned. But what I don't like about that is it still restricts me to that sort of 5.5, 5.6 territory in FPL, which I still don't like. As we said, Rodrigo is the most interesting asset at 6.0 and above, not including Martinelli. And you might really want to push into getting two of those players or two of those kind of price bracket players in your team and into your template. As far as the other price rises, I'm not really interested in Warren Patterson, so nothing to say there. And then the next page is actually mostly looking at some players who are 4.5 defenders. I think a lot of people are moving into them because options like Dalot haven't interested whatsoever. Schär has obviously had a price increase already, so he's an interesting asset to think about when you're covering Newcastle defense. Trippier hasn't got the attacking return so far that we expected, and Schär has by contrast. So that's going to be an interesting thing, whether people will continue to move into cheaper assets from that point of view. But I don't think that's the way to go. I do think Trippier is the better option, projecting longer. So if we go towards the end and look towards the price decreases, so Sancho's already very, very close to another price decrease. Diego Carlos has had a long-term injury, so definitely try to transfer him out if you already have him. Players like Rashford, players from United, seem to be generally dropping like flies, and I can completely understand why. The next game is Liverpool, and they haven't looked any better. I think it'll be a matter of time, and maybe around December we'll see a better United team, just like when, for example, in Arteta's first season, it took until that Chelsea game after the winter break for them to actually start kicking on, but that's going to take a while. So that's the interesting thing. Solanke is also dropped because he probably hasn't gotten as good returns as people projected. He's also someone who has tougher fixtures when you compare him to other managers or other forwards like Tony, so that's an interesting thing. Cash and Dean obviously continuing to fall. Nothing else too interesting on this page, but I did want to actually cast your eye into someone like Darwin as well, who's dropping on this page, and then Bailey, who's very close from Aston Villa, so he's also getting a lot of trade momentum at 95. I do imagine that both Bailey and Darwin could hit substantial price decreases this week, and that could really block us out of a lot of moves. So I do like moving out of Bailey into a 4.5. I think that's the safest option to play with. As I said, if you have 0.5 as a manager, the 5.5 options just aren't that interesting to me. So it does really require a little bit of tinkering and messing around in my mind to try and get to someone like Rodrigo, who I think is really, really good value. Or you can move into going some defenders at the 4.5 price range. Ultimately, players like Dunk or players like Ben Mee or Pontus Jansson from Brentford are very, very interesting. You could also go for Saliba if you don't, for some reason, have triple Arsenal already. Those are the options that I'd like to think about if you want to move out of Bailey. As far as the forwards, just nothing there at the moment, just because of the price points. And that's it, actually, with the video for the price statistics. I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I'll see you guys very, very shortly.